What's up, nerds? Welcome back to the Mayhem. I say that because today we're going to be looking at some off-the-wall destruction in Evil Ernie number 2. So if you watched my first video reviewing basically the first issue of this series, you saw that we had this new protagonist named Ernest Gleckman, who was sort of like a nerdy kid, but apparently he's like super into metal, which I mean works for me. And so he went to this like heavy metal karaoke show and he sings, I think he sang like his own original stuff. Anyway, when he was leaving from there, he was on his scooter and he was basically attacked. We'll use that word. He was attacked by this motorcycle gang, and they basically caused him to go off a cliff. And then, like, I think his scooter exploded, which I don't think would actually happen. But anyway, he was there. He was all mangled, and basically he died. So that's actually where we're picking up. Where now he's in the morgue, and we see these two, the coroner, or no, the I guess the medical examiner, whatever. So they're there, and the it's him and I think she's the police chief because he calls her chief. I've been the coroner over 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. And she's like, well, it's so terrible, but I just can't look away. And yeah, I can see why. I, um, I mean, this isn't so terrible when you look at the art itself, but if you were looking at this in real life, yeah, I'd imagine it'd be pretty damn horrifying. Anyway, so he's saying, when you called this in, you told me it looked like an accident. She's like, well, yeah, there were skid marks, and then his bike well, she calls it a bike. It was a scooter, went over the cliff. It was quite a fall. So he's like, I'm not buying it. Whoever did this is some sick son of a bitch. So she's saying, you weren't saying it was murder, Wallace. He's like, well, I'm saying it looks like he pissed someone off. Anyway, he tells her that he's going to go through every nook and cranny and then he'll let her know what she finds or what he finds. And then she says the boy isn't even old enough to drink. Maybe pretend to be a professional. So she opens his wallet and takes out his student ID to kind of see his name. And one thing that I noticed when I was reading this, the kid has $100 bill in there. Like you can just barely see it poking out right there, but that's $100. I was like, damn, why were you rolling around with that much money? Especially in today's economy? My God. Anyway, so she's like noticing like what college he went to and everything. She says, I'm going to drive out to the campus, see what I can find out about the kid. And so he says, sounds like you're micromanaging. Like, don't you have officers who can go and do that? And she's like, well, like you said, there's never been anything like this. So he's like, well, let me walk you out and I'll get started. And then she goes and like puts the jacket on him, and we can see Smiley the button is also on the jacket. So she puts that on him basically to kind of cover him up. I don't really know why. He's in the morgue. There's no real reason to cover him up. Anyway, so we see that as soon as they leave, Smiley the Button's like, all right, boss, the coast is clear. So that brings evil Ernie to life, and he starts laughing and shit. And then he says, it's good to be back, to which Smiley says, should we get out of here? Or are you going to have some fun with the old guy? So he's like, you have to ask. So obviously, yeah, he's going to fuck with the old guy. And then we don't actually know exactly what it is that he does to the coroner, because we go to the college now where she showed up, and then she's like getting ready to go and like look around, see what answers she can find from like his dorm room or whatever. And then as she's getting out, she gets a call from him, and she's like, well, there's no way that he's already finished this fast, so that means he's only calling on me, he's only calling to like hit on me again. So she's like, no, I'm just gonna go and ignore the call. That's what I'm saying. He was probably calling for help, because I mean, knowing evil Ernie, he was probably torturing the shit out of the guy. We won't know just yet. Anyway, so she walks in and she says, "Sorry, Wallace, life is too short for cheap wine." And I guess I agree with that. But as someone who has delighted in cheap wine on many a desperate night, just there's something about it. You know what I mean? Like never look down. Never look down your nose at it. It helps out in a pinch when you need it. That $12 bottle of wine or cheaper. Sometimes you can't find it cheaper. I'm not always saying that's a good thing, but you can. Anyway, so she shows up, and then she's saying like, yeah, according to the registrar's office, this is supposed to be his room. So she knocks on the door for whatever, like, if you know he's dead, why would you be knocking? I guess there's a possibility he has a roommate, but anyway, she knocks on the door and says that she identifies herself as police, and then she's surprised to see him open the door. And one thing I will notice, they have him in these pajama pants that say Trek Wars. I was like, all right, I see what y'all were doing. Anyway, So he greets her and says, "Morning, officer. Can I help you?" And she's like, You're Ernest Gleckman?" He's like, "The one and only." So she's like, "That's impossible. I came here to get your roommate to identify your body." So yeah, he does have a roommate. Although I only see one bed in here, so I don't know where the roommate would be sleeping anyway. So she says, "You're dead." And he's like, "Well, I'm afraid you got some really bad intel because I'm obviously very clearly alive." And then she kind of like comes in. She's like, "Can you tell me about what happened to you last night? Like where you were?" So he basically says, "I went to a bar, place does heavy metal karaoke." And she's like, "Well, you're too young to drink. So why do you look like a train hit you?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a pretty enthusiastic performer." So she's like, "All right, what happened after that?" And he says, "After that, I came back and I studied until I passed out." But we can see where he's kind of having a flashback to him on the scooter, like going over the cliff and shit. So she's saying, "I'd like you to come down to the station, answer a few questions for me." He's like, "Why? Because not being dead is somehow a crime?" He's like, "No, I think we're going to go ahead and decline." She's like, "Look, Ernie, if you're in some kind of trouble," and he cuts her off by saying, "It's Ernest. My only concern is being late for class." So he closes the door and then he's like, "Damn, that was a close one." Towards the button is like, don't worry about it, kid. Relax, you're going to be fine." He says, "Yeah," says the talking, smiling pin. So this is where we go over to his girlfriend who's like sitting on this bench when this like jock dude comes up and is like trying to hit on her and say like, "Oh, you know what? We should just like hook up. I think we can have fun." She's like, I have a boyfriend." He's like, "Oh, you mean that skinny little nerdy dude who's always with you?" Like, "Yeah, don't worry about him. Um, that wimp you keep hanging around like a lovesick chow chow." He's like, "Pfft." So she says, "That wimp is the kindest, smartest, sexiest man I've ever met. You aren't worthy enough to lick his butt." So he's like doing the whole "well, I oughta," but then all of a sudden that's when Ernest comes up and like grabs her by the arm and just like yanks her away, and then immediately does the whole kissing thing. So, for whatever reason, apparently this makes the jock very nervous because she at first is like, "Well, what happened to like your whole aversion to public displays of affection?" And he says like, "Well, basically I just got over it." You know, and then this is where I'm saying like the jock is also like, "Okay, this is pretty awkward. I'm just going to go ahead and go." So Ernest gives him like this look where he's like, "Why are you still here?" And then they go on talking, but we can see in the background the jock is like running away. I was like, what? Like you just called him like a nerdy wimp, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm gonna run away now." Like, what the hell is that? Anyway, so she's saying like, "How was your gig last night?" And he's like, "Great, excellent, cool, even." So she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be late to class. I'll see you tonight." And then he says, "Wild horses." I don't really know what that means. I don't know if that's some sort of like colloquialism from somewhere that I've never heard before. Who says wild horses? I don't know. Anyway, so he like turns around and he's like, "What the hell?" Because he sees this bike that just showed up. And he's like, "Is this supposed to be mine?" And quite honestly, if I saw a bike looking this sick, I wouldn't even ask questions. I would literally just climb on and ride off. You know what I mean? And I don't even know how to ride a motorcycle. But I would literally just hop on and be like, "Okay, yeah, this is mine." And I'm taking off. So he gets on and does that, and then all of a sudden there's this note that's flying away because it was attached to the bike. You can see in the first panel, and it just says "sorry about the bike," and then it's XOR, which is Ronique, the one who gave him the smiling pin. So he rides off on that, and then he's going back to the bar because he's still curious about like what the hell happened, because he's even thinking to himself like, "Okay, yeah, I can't really remember everything that happened," but he's remembering, "Okay, yeah, I went to the bar, I talked to Ronique, the bartender slash owner. She was very supportive of me going up, and then she also gave me the pin." And then he says, "I remember my scooter, the motorcycle gang, then nothing. I came back to where it all started." And so as he's pulling up, he sees like, "Oh shit, this place is very clearly abandoned." So he's like rolling up and he says, "How is this possible? This place looks like it has been abandoned forever. But I was just here last night." So he walks up and he sees there's a condemned sign on the door. He's like, and then he also apparently sees that it's been 10 years that it was condemned. So he's like, "What the hell?" So he walks in and for whatever reason calls out to the Heavenly Father and says, "Protect me while I solve this mystery you put in front of me." So he walks into the bar and everything and sees that, yeah, it's very clearly abandoned, like there's no one here. So he thinks that maybe it's just like some sort of joke. He starts calling out. He's like, "All right, you got me. Like that was a good one. You pulled one over on me." And then he's like, "Hello? Anyone? Ronique?" And then we see where he just like runs away. And I wasn't really sure at first, but it's kind of explained up here where he's like, why am I so damn cold? Like, is it because it's actually cold, or am I just like completely consumed by my fear? So that's when the pin, he starts like putting on the jacket, and then the pin is like saying, dumb wad. Finally, he's like, no, shut up. So he said, the smiley says, but I can help you, idiot face, if you'd stop being a pussy and listen to me. And so he's like writing away. He's like, I don't need your demonic flashbacks and your juvenile name calling. I'm going to my local pastor. And Smiley's like, I didn't even think of that. If I had a hand, I'd slap myself in the forehead. So he's writing away, and then all of a sudden the like biker gang comes up, and they're like, "Wow, you really didn't learn your lesson the first time? I guess how many times are we gonna have to teach you this lesson, young man?" And shit like that. So he says, "You might be surprised," and then like one of the guys is like, "You think New Wheels is gonna help you? What? Who the hell do you think you are?" So that's where he turns into Evil Ernie fully, and then he like turns around to actually confront them, saying, "You tell me, who do I look like?" One of them's like sort of like Satan, and then another one says like Sam Winchester, which is from Supernatural. I've never watched the show. I know, shocking, but I've never watched the show, but I do recognize the name. Anyway, so he's saying, I love that show. And they said, step aside, boys. Evil Ernie is coming through. So a bunch of them actually do realize, like, oh shit, Evil Ernie, like, we thought you were just a legend. Like, we're so sorry. But the one in the front pulls out his gun. And he's like, I don't care who the hell he says he is. We're going to take him out. So he goes to try and, like, take him down. But he literally punches off his head and then rips off his arm that has the gun and shit. And this is where I was talking about, like, the fucking carnage that's about to ensue. So one of the, like two of the guys I guess say kill him or whatever, so he leaps from his bike and says, really, kill him? Those were going to be your last words? As he's like splatting their heads together and shit. So they all keep trying to like attack him. And then there's the one saying like, demon or not, you die. He tries to like throw a chain at him, thinking that was going to help. So he's like, keep your eyes open. He grabs one of the guys, and then as he goes to like kill one of them, he uses the bike that's still coming forward and throws that guy into it, which literally causes the whole thing to, or like the damn, like, I guess, tire to basically bisect the guy up his damn crotch, which when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, that's not a way to go out. Anyway, so he uses the chain to decapitate the guy who is basically like swinging the chain at him and shit. And that's why I was saying, like, why would you use a chain? Very obviously, he was going to use it to kill you. And then he's like leaping over them, still killing them, saying, this is like a surprise party where I get to kill all the guests. So they keep trying to like shoot at him and shit. And then the other one's like, are you crazy? We need to get out of here now. So he's like, oh, in a flash. And then we see where, again, I've seen where apparently, like, if one, for one thing, if cars don't blow up, I don't think the bikes blow up either. But I mean, who knows? Comic books anyway. So this last guy is trying to say, like, please, Mr. E, like, I have information, like, I'll tell you what I know if you'll let me live. He's like, all right, go ahead and spill, tell me what you know. So he's basically telling him, like, it was all Ronique. Like, she basically hired us and had us run you off the road and kill you and shit like that. And he says, she's behind all of this, even if I can't tell you why. To which Ernie's like, oh, wow, that was very helpful. I will let you go. And he's like, really? He's like, so, really? So, of course, he rips out his intestines and shit. And he's like, the funny thing is that you thought you were telling me something I didn't already know. So he starts walking away from all of the mayhem, and then we see where basically Ernest is starting to like break through. He's like, "Stop! Enough!" And he's like, "What the hell?" And he asks Smiley like, "What the hell's going on?" To which he says, "It's the kid." So he's like, "Well, he's a fight." Well, Smiley says he's a fighter. So Ernie says, "This has never happened before. Swear to me, if I didn't need him, I'd tear his punk ass head off his." And then he kind of like gets cut off because he starts fainting. So Smiley's like, "Boss, like now's not really a good time for you to be passing out." So we see where he turns back into Ernest, and he's looking much worse for wear. So he's just kind of laying there as the smiley button is saying, "Psst, not the best time to pass out." And of course, we see Ronique is walking up. She's like, "As I don't live and breathe." She says, "It is the love of my life, Evil Ernie. How I've missed you." So that's where the issue leaves off for right now. Once again, he's like left in the woods, basically just, like I said, looking worse for wear. So we're going to see what ends up happening from that. That should be pretty interesting because, like I said, I definitely enjoyed the whole scene of Evil Ernie like killing the whole biker gang. That was pretty badass, I'm not gonna lie. But the whole thing of him just like turning back into, or Ernest being able to like reassert control to some degree, because he's still somehow in there. That should be a pretty interesting dynamic to see how that's going to develop, see how that's going to play out with this particular storyline. So I'm definitely into it. I do like this story. You know, it's very much up my alley in that regard. You know what I mean? It's very metal. I don't know many other ways to describe it. It's very metal. So I'm definitely enjoying it. I'm going to keep picking up, the issues as they come out. I just hope it stays an entertaining story. You know what I mean? Don't get bogged down into too much of anything trying to be, I don't really know what would be a proper term there. Trying to be too deep, I guess. You know what I mean? Just be a fun story, which so far it is. So hopefully it stays on that track. We're going to find out. We'll see how it plays out. But if anybody out there is continuing to read this, if you've been reading this, do feel free to share your thoughts with me. If you're not reading it and you just watched the video, feel free to share your thoughts with me anyway. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you hit the like button, make sure that you are subscribed, hit the notification bell. That way you know when I have new comic reviews coming out for you. I was going to do a live stream today, but I figured I better work on some reviews because my boyfriend's actually been sick, so I'm trying to take care of him and shit like that, so I just don't really have the time to devote to, doing an actual live stream. So that's fine. I will work on videos as I can, get them out. That's why I'm saying make sure you have the notification bell hit. That way you know when I have new videos coming out for you. And if you'd like to share this video, I definitely do appreciate that. But if you're done here, go and read a book, possibly this one. And if not, then I'll see you on my next video.